Tonight, therapy, counselling, exercise fads and the self-help industry. We're all desperately trying to be normal, but the truth is, there's no such thing.
This is the strange story of Bernie Greenland, a normal, happy man who usually enjoys life. He may be someone you know.
The thing about normal is that most people worry that they're not. We worry that if everyone else knew what our inner fears, concerns, secret thoughts and odd habits were, then they might think that we were mad. So we carry on and present as normal and respectable a face to the world as we can. But the truth is, everyone is a bit crazy. The people who know the most about how crazy you are, there's two sort of spheres. One is your neighbours, they know quite a bit. And your immediate family, like your partner, probably knows the most about how crazy you are, but if we're being honest, even they don't know how genuinely crazy you are. What we're going to do is we're going to start at the back of the room and go through each row, and we're just going to share some of those, to make it easier for the people at home, because they will listen to this stuff and they go, well, I'm not the only one that feels like strangling budgies. Putting them down my trousers and just walking, because I like the fluffy dead budgie feel down my trousers. That's quite nice.
I don't think there is such a thing as normal.
Everybody's weird, just more or less and in different ways.
I think if you're not a Satanist, a murderer, or in a psychiatric hospital, then you are normal.
I think if you're abnormal, then you don't have good morals and you don't have the right outlook on life that you should have, and treating others respectfully is pretty much normal.
The bottom line is, there's lots of people out there that do some pretty odd stuff, but that doesn't necessarily make them crazy. What it comes down to is whether it's causing you or other people problems. I decided to find someone who challenges the conventional definition of normal, but is still happy and functioning. 36-year-old Andrew Brown believes he's the reincarnation of Vlad Tepes, aka Count Dracula. He changed his name to Vlad Dracula Brown, the meanest vampire in the whole damn town. He's implanted horns, real fangs, and sleeps in a coffin. So, like most people would say, vampires can only come out at night, they can't go out in the sunlight, they don't like garlic, all that kind of stuff, no reflection. But clearly, like, you do all of those things.
My favourite time is night time. I do hate sunlight, but, you know, I have to live in it, I have to work in it, and, you know, I just get on with it. You know, I do like the lifestyle that vampires do lead, you know, the kind of keeping away from society to a point, at the same time, you know, enjoying some more out of it type of activities.
One of Drake's more unusual hobbies is suspension. This is where he's suspended by hooks into his flesh. Considered normal by swamis in India, Christchurch, not so much. Say you've met an actual vampire, like, do you think they'll be cool with what you've done, or would they just go, oi, hang on?
As far as I'm concerned, they'd bow down to me, knowing that I'm one of the top vampires. As far as I'm concerned, I'm over 570 inside, and there's not that many vampires of that age in this world.
Now, I know what you're thinking. This is all a bit mad. Vampires aren't real. But just because some of Drake's ideas are a little out there doesn't make him crazy. He's got a partner and kids and still manages to help run a household. In most respects, it's a very normal life, and he seems very happy with it. At the end of the day, it's how a person deals with everyday life that makes a difference. You actually have quite a normal life in every other respect.
I've got kids, help out down at a mate's workshop every so often, titter around at home with the airbrush.
Do you think there'll come a day where you sort of stop thinking about yourself like a vampire and just go back to being Andrew?
I'm 36 next month, yeah. I'm still of the same belief as when I was that big. So the likelihood that I'm ever going to believe that I'm 100% normal human being is very, very small.
My point here isn't about the rights or wrongs of thinking you're a vampire, more about what's normal and what isn't. People often assume that if you're eccentric or abnormal, that you're also crazy or unhappy or unwell.
I get into.
But is that true? I asked a colleague who's an expert in this field.
Historically, it was assumed that wellness and unwellness from a mental health perspective were a continuum, whereas it's now really clear that they are to a degree disconnected dimensions. So you can be in a state of mental wellness and be unhappy, and you can be in a state of mental illness. So, for example, you know, it's been demonstrated that people can have symptoms of being mentally unwell, but can be contented and happy. We're all a bit crazy, aren't we? And I mean, a lot of creativity comes from our craziness, but I mean, even beyond that, it's really interesting that there have been studies done in Europe that show that the very same symptoms that would, if a person saw a psychiatrist, lead to a diagnosis of a psychotic illness, are present in between 5 and 6% of the community. And yet only 0.5% of people get diagnosed with, for example, schizophrenia. So when they then have compared, well, what makes the difference between people who end up in a state of distress that leads them into services versus those who don't? And it's not so much the nature of the symptoms, it's really two things. Do people have a sense of how to make meaningful sense of the experiences or not? And also, do they have a sense of kind of control over in a positive sense versus being controlled by and having a negative sense of meaning?
And indeed, history's full of successful people who are eccentric or struggle with mental illness but went on to achieve great things. Even the sanest and most ordinary of us struggle to act normal in certain situations. I myself find that arrival halls at international airports are the places where I struggle the most to act completely normal, because you know, it's that thing about when you know you're being observed, you suddenly become very conscious of all of the things that you do. And so you're sort of the veneer between how crazy you are and the real world gets really thin. And for me, I always find at that moment that I lose the ability to walk like a normal person. And instead, I cannot help but walk as if I have about 5 kilograms of stuff up my jacksie. So I'm like... And the more you do it, the more you think, oh, please stop walking like that. But it's like my legs don't know how to do it. Just like when you're on the highway, on the motorway, and there's a police car beside you, I always feel like I have bodies in the boot of my car. And I literally, this always happens. I say to myself, do not give them that shifty look. Don't. Just look straight ahead. It's not hard. Look not to the left, look not to the right. Just look ahead. It will all be fine. And then I do this.
What are you two still doing here?
Relaxing.
In our own home.
Which we pay for.
I told you both, Damien is coming over, and I didn't want you sitting around acting all weird. He's here! Quick! Hide!
We're not going anywhere.
I hate you both.
So, what do you think of this one?
Oh, tangerine white. Nice.
My parents are home. Don't worry, they're very normal. Just normal, everyday, normal folks. Mother, Father, I'd like you to meet Damien.
Sup?
So no one's normal, but instead of accepting this, we're all trying to fix ourselves. Sigmund Freud is considered to be the father of modern psychotherapy. He's the bloke who blamed everything on sex. However, psychotherapy in one form or another has been around for centuries. In the Middle Ages, mental disorders were generally blamed on demonic possession and were treated with exorcism, which often led to the death of the patient. Problem solved. The notorious mental asylum Bethlehem, aka Bedlam, admitted its first patient in 1357. Conditions were dreadful and care amounted to little more than restraint. These days we tend to rely more on medication and conversation, which, not surprisingly, seems to make people feel much better than Dungeons and Demons ever did. we get lumbered with all this bloody self-help stuff, which says that, like, if bad things happen to you, you've somehow called that into your life. That woman that wrote that book, The Secret, it not being that much of a secret, and that was published in an actual book. She called it Not Quite So. There used to be a secret. But she was interviewed after the Boxing Day tsunami, and she said that she wondered what those people did to invite the tsunami into their lives. And it's like, that's not an isolated belief. I've spoken to people who have a diagnosis of cancer who were told by some sort of, you know, mumbo-jumbo, touchy-feely sort of psychotherapy sort of person, what do you think you did to invite cancer into your life? And it's not like you think, it's not like you're ever going to say, well, like, it was Saturday night, I wanted to go see this movie, there was no one else, so I said, oh, cancer, do you want to... It's quite a good movie on. Do you want to come to a movie? Oh, yeah. Just a movie, though, eh? Like, nothing else. It's just, we're just going to go to a movie, watch the movie, and then we're on our own separate way. Yeah, of course we are. And that was how I got invited cancer into... He just went, and it wouldn't shift out. Like, that stuff is mad. Like, sometimes you didn't actually invite bad things into your life. You know, that idea that if you get sacked from your job, if you're made redundant, somehow you're sort of invited not being able to pay your mortgage into your life because somehow you wanted that, so you've sort of sucked it in from the universe. It is completely mad. Sometimes shit just happens, man. I know someone who had been through some stuff and was asked about the pie of responsibility. Like, so of the pie of responsibility, how many slices of the pie are yours? In the trauma trifle, how many scoops did you get? The flip side of the bonkers notion that everything bad that's ever happened to you was your fault for having negative thoughts is the equally insane notion that you can get rich and successful and nothing bad will ever happen by doing nothing more than thinking good thoughts. The positive thinking stuff, like, that's the plague of our times. The woman called, what's her name? Barbara Ehrenreich, right? She wrote a book called Smile or Die about the sort of plague of positive thinking. One of the examples that she gives is that in Lehman Brothers, like the people who basically economically shafted the entire world, their sort of company policy was, you must only think positive and happy thoughts. There is no place for negative people here. So if you were the wee bloke that went, well, look, I know you say that we've eliminated risk, but, like, when we give, like, massive mortgages to people with no security and no ability to pay them, it does seem like we've left a smidgen of risk in there somewhere, doesn't it? Really. And that person got sacked, and of course the whole thing fell over, and then all these other people got sacked, and then they were being told they invited it into their lives and stuff, and it's all because of all this positive thinking, nicey bollocks. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with trying to sort out your problems, and some problems do need expert help. But you do have to be careful about what kind of therapy you choose. There's lots of snake oil and crazy stuff out there, and there's some actually good and helpful things out there. I think it's quite good to try to figure out what things work best with what thing before you just go hoovering off to see someone. There's some of it is just complete quackery, like the people who practice bizarre things like rebirthing, where you somehow sort of, like, you sit down on a bunch of pillows and you sort of squeeze yourself out into the world again and sort of deal with all your unresolved birth stuff. I got a very angry email from a man once. He was upset because I swore at a talk, and he said, swearing isn't natural. Babies don't swear. If babies don't swear, it can't be natural, so therefore we shouldn't do it. And my immediate thought was, well, but if they could swear, they would, wouldn't they? Wouldn't they? Like, if there was ever a time in your life when you would swear, it would be then. Because you'd be floating around the dark going, oh, yeah, this is brilliant. What's going on? Oh, right now. Oh, hang on. The f*** is that all about? There would be a stream of filth coming out of that little baby's mouth. If you think you've got problems, it's not necessarily a bad idea to sit down and talk with someone. However, shelling out lots of money on counselling or therapy isn't the only option. Sometimes the best way to deal with an issue is just to pull up your socks and get on with life. Actually, if you're depressed, Rather than sitting around talking about your feelings and things, what you need to do is get up and get active and get involved with life and get involved with people and do stuff. Like, sometimes weavering about all your feelings and dredging them up is not a good idea. There's sort of, in some aspects of the psychotherapy field, it's considered a hit, a good sesh, if your person's bubbling and bawling in tears and beating pillows because they're letting out all this drama. All of these feelings, look at them letting out the feelings. This has been a very good session. I feel very good about how you're doing with the letting out of the drama. What you should do is not do that. It's about getting active and getting out, exercising, doing all that kind of stuff. Getting a hobby. There's a thing called cosplay, right, which sounds rude, but it's not. What it is, I thought it was rude initially until I Googled it and thought, oh, it's not that, it's the other one. Because apparently there are people, there's a thing, this is how weird people are, there's a thing where people dress up as pterodactyls and shag each other. Like, if you're feeling a bit in the mood, you get your pterodactyl suit on. So it's not that, it's different. This is the real cosplay. Cosplay is all about dressing up as fantasy characters from comics or science fiction. Of course, I was expecting Mr. Spock or Donald Duck, but it turns out that the characters are from Japanese graphic novels, video games or movies. Meet Jessica Woodward. She's a 20-year-old third-year graphic design student, but in her spare time she's Yuna the Summoner or a bunch of other Japanese people I've never heard of. What is it that you like about cosplay?
I guess what it's about is picking a character, dressing up as them, whether you make the costume yourself or you buy it, and then usually you'll do it at a convention or a gathering of other people who are doing it. Not many people do it alone, and just running around in costume having fun, basically.
What led you into cosplay?
It's a little bit the character and a little bit the costume design. A friend of mine likened it to petrol heads fixing up cars. You know, they're fans of cars, so they make cars themselves, that kind of thing. Or like rugby fans dressing up in their team's colours for the match. It's, I guess, just a slightly more geeky version.
Jessica designs and makes all her own costumes and has won several awards for her creativity. But cosplay means much more to Jessica than just a hobby. A while back, she went through a bad patch and was clinically depressed and also self-harmed. But then she discovered cosplay.
It's really hard when you're like that to sort of smile or think about something else, just to like shrug it off or whatever. But I guess having something to actively pursue makes a huge difference into how much easier it is to throw off.
The answer doesn't always have to be therapy. Sometimes all you need is to get out and do stuff and have something positive to focus on. And if it works, why not?
Whenever I've sort of started to head down that slope again, self-harm is quite often something that comes to mind that I haven't cut since, because I don't want the scars showing up in my photos when I'm in costume, which maybe sounds silly, but hey, it's better than not having any reason at all.
Psychological balance is less about fitting in with the mainstream and more about finding things that make you happy and fulfilled, even if it seems odd to other people. When I was in high school, a teenager, where looking cool's quite important, my dad dropped me off once at a sixth form field trip, and my dad was into country and western music, and he was wearing his costume at the time, which was this green shirt with these gold sort of tassels all over it, and this sparkly stuff here, this big hat with a feather in it, and these black pants with these big cowboy boots. And like, we're driving up, and I'm thinking, oh, please God, no, just drop me and leave it. It's all right, Dad, you just drop me. You guys said, no, it's all right, I'll get out. And he gets it, oh my God. So I sit on the bus, just shrinking, dying inside, as he's standing there, and you look outside the window at all the other parents, and it's like, you know, accountant, farmer, accountant, works in an office, another farmer, cowboy, farmer. It was literally one of the most embarrassing moments of my adolescence, But oddly, when I look back on it now, it's one of my most favourite memories of my dad. Because what I liked about him was, like, he was doing his thing, man, you know? And, like, he didn't care if other people weren't into his thing. He was doing his thing, and he was having a really good time. And I quite like that, and I often think about that. Now, what's unfortunate for my sons is that I still have the shirt. And one day I shall teach them the lesson that my father taught to me. In summary, don't stress about being normal. There's no such thing as normal. Everybody's a bit crazy. It's how a person copes with life that really counts. If you're feeling a little down, a first step, get out into the world, get involved, get a hobby. If you aren't happy and have problems you can't fix yourself, don't be afraid to get proper help. The bottom line is however you choose to think or behave or what you're into, as long as it doesn't hurt you or other people, it's fine. So that's it. Good night and good luck.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.